All right, praising God for, among other things, remembering. In this chapter, he is going to give a low-key, wink to the way in which he at times corrects old wrongs in this chapter, Hosea 1, that we want to call location, 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 and why hopefully will be clear in just a few minutes. Understanding that Hosea is going to be introduced as a prophet who prophesies under the reign of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. For the most part, pretty decent or righteous kings, of course, with their own flaws, but with the exception of Ahaz, for the most part, they seem to be men of decent character. Going on, he is going to be told, or the prophet Hosea is going to be told to take a wife of whoredom, who is going to eventually be named as the famous Gomer. But the reason he is told to take a wife of whoredom is because the land is full of whoredom. And much like Ezekiel's own life ended up becoming an illustration for the people of God, it's going to seem that in time Hosea was a kind of precursor or foreshadowing of the way in which God at times will use his men as an illustration of the things he is trying to get across to his people. So it's going to be tough for Hosea, but Gomer, the wife of whoredom, is going to bear him 3 children, one named Jezreel, a son, then a daughter named No Mercy, and then another son by the name of Not My People. All illustrations of the way in which God, at least at this point, is rejecting his people who have given themselves over once again to whoredom. Jezreel is named Jezreel because of some of the sins apparently that Jehu committed at Jezreel as he was executing judgment on the house of Ahab. One of the story we'll tell a little bit more of toward the end. Daughter No Mercy is named No Mercy because he is going to have no mercy on Israel, even though he is going to say that he will still maintain a level of mercy for Judah, at least at this point. And then finally, the son, Not My People, is going to be named Not My People, but there is kind of light at the end of that tunnel, not a train, because he was going to say, yet the number of the children of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, and those called Not My People will be known as children of the living God. Judah and Israel together will be reunited under one leader as they go up from the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. And the reason why location stood out to me is not only because the location or the setting of this seems to be important to name it as Jezreel at the beginning and at the end, but in the middle it's going to seem to matter as well. Because why? Jehu corrected a great sin that you might know by the names of the people involved. Ahab, as we have already mentioned, got greedy for some property that belonged to a man by the name of Naboth. And Naboth is known as a Jezreelite. And so the land that Ahab had stolen with the assistance of Jezebel from Naboth, basically having him executed to take his property, was in the land of Jezreel. Jehu, who executed judgment against Ahab's household, basically killed them on ground zero of that sin. Even though God forgave Ahab went back to the sins, or the same types of sins that he was forgiven for when he had essentially Naboth murdered. And so even though Jehu was seemingly executing God's judgment against the house of Ahab at the scene of the crime, it seems once again that, as we have seen, with instruments of God's judgment on a national level, just as the Babylonians were sent in to deal with Israel, or would be eventually after the days of Hosea, sent in to deal with Israel, but they went too far and attracted God's judgment for themselves in much the same way that the Assyrians dealt with Israel and went too far, and Babylon went too far in dealing with Judah and attracted judgment. Likewise, it seems that we are getting a step back in time to their predecessor in God's own people from Jehu, one God sent to execute judgment, but who might have gone too far and has now attracted judgment for himself in the very same place he executed God's judgment against others. However, as morbidly as the book of Hosea may start out in chapter 1, and it's not going to get a whole lot better in following chapters, at least chapter 1 ends with God pointing forward to the fact that he can use the same place where he executes judgment as ground zero for restoration. Thus, Jezreel, a place where he has twice executed judgment for heinous sins, is going to come full circle. And just as he has now avenged old wrongs done on Naboth's property. He is now, as we've said, used this property, or is now promising to use Jezreel as ground zero for, God willing, restoring his people to a level of character that will make the kinds of treachery seen in Jezreel a thing of the past.